chosen ones, these 5 quantum keys activate your multidimensional powers. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when time seems to bend, when something invisible but undeniable cracks through the surface of the ordinary and whispers, "You are not who you think you are." Maybe it happened to you in a dream that felt more real than waking life. Maybe it occurred during a sudden loss, a crisis, a moment of overwhelming beauty, or even in the silence between breaths when everything seemed to stop and you felt it. That flicker of recognition, that shift in your chest, that unshakable knowing this life is a mission, not a mistake. That moment isn't random, it's a signal. It's the universal code embedded deep within your DNA beginning to activate. And the first quantum key. You see, you were never meant to live a life of pure survival. But you were never meant to just work, sleep, repeat. There is something ancient inside you that has lived through civilizations lost to memory. Something within you remembers the stars. Not symbolically, literally. You are a multidimensional being, compressed into human form, carrying light codes that have been dormant for lifetimes. And now, in this lifetime, on this planet, during this phase of spiritual evolution, they are beginning to wake up. You're not imagining your spiritual longing. You're not crazy for feeling like you don't belong. You've been encoded with a frequency that only a few carry, and it's finally coming online.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
But here's the catch. Awakening isn't comfortable. It's not soft music and incense and perfect peace. It's disruptive. It shakes your relationships. It collapses your old identity. It makes you question everything you once called real. And that's the first test. Because the first quantum key, called the frequency of remembering, doesn't hand you answers. It fractures illusions. It dissolves the false matrix you were taught to live in. That's why it feels like your life falls apart when you begin to awaken. But in truth, it's not falling apart, it's realigning. The people who ghost you, the job that breaks, the anxiety that rises, it's all part of the recalibration. Your soul is turning up the volume, and anything that isn't aligned with your true vibration will begin to shake and eventually fall away. So the question is, will you resist it or surrender to it? Because this is where most people stop. They feel the awakening, then run back to comfort. They numb themselves with distractions. They try to rebuild the old life with new spiritual language. But you're not here to stop. You're here to activate, and activation begins with acceptance. You must accept that everything you thought you were is based on programming. Your name, your past, even your wounds were shaped by a collective field designed to keep you small. But when you begin to remember who you actually are, not the surface identity, but the multidimensional being underneath, you start to feel a new kind of power. Not egoic power, energetic power. The kind that doesn't need proof, the kind that simply is. Let me ask you something. What if every breakdown was actually a message? What if the chaos in your life was sacred architecture designed to shatter the illusion of separation? What if your suffering wasn't a punishment, but a signal that your old self is no longer compatible with your soul's vibration? This is the frequency of remembering. And it's not just a feeling, it's a quantum code. It begins to sync your nervous system with a higher field of information. That's why you start feeling more sensitive, more attuned. You notice synchronicities. You feel people's energy. You intuitively know when someone's lying. You wake up at strange hours. You lose interest in what used to excite you. It's not depression. It's dimensional detachment. Your spirit is unplugging from the simulation so you can plug into your original blueprint. That's where your powers begin to activate. But that's just the first key, and it's useless unless you move through it with awareness. Because the moment you remember, the universe begins to test your alignment. You'll be asked to shed old versions of yourself like skins. You'll be pulled into the void, into uncertainty, into silence. Not because you're being punished, but because your soul needs space to recode. You can't activate your multidimensional abilities while clinging to your old identity, but the two are incompatible, so the destruction is divine. The emptiness is sacred. Your confusion is actually recalibration. Here's the mistake many make. They think awakening is about gaining something. More clarity, more purpose, more peace. But the first phase is about loss. The loss of illusions. The loss of attachments. The loss of who you thought you needed to be. And that's terrifying to the ego. But it's nourishment for the soul. Because the more you let go, the more you make space for the next quantum key, alignment with the field of infinite intelligence. And this is where things get wild. Because once you've remembered who you are not intellectually, but energetically, you begin to align with a field of consciousness that is always broadcasting truth. And that field begins to speak through you, through symbols, through intuition, through a magnetic pull towards certain people, places, and experiences. You no longer chase your purpose. You follow the pull. You don't guess what's next. You tune in and respond. But before you can fully tune in, you must master this first key. You must be willing to stand in the fire of your own transformation without flinching. You must be willing to lose the false safety of your smallness. You must be willing to ask yourself the rawest question of all. Who am I when there's nothing left to prove, no one left to please, and nowhere left to hide? Because that's the moment your true self begins to emerge, not the version shaped by trauma, but the version shaped by truth. The one who remembers why you came to this planet, the one who carries the codes, the one who is not afraid of the dark because they are the light in disguise. That's who you are. And now the keys are beginning to unlock. The magnet code, aligning with the quantum field to attract everything meant for you. Once you begin to remember who you are not as a name, not as a personality, but as a multidimensional being woven from starlight and source code, something astonishing begins to happen. Your reality starts responding to you differently. Not because you're trying harder, not because you're manifesting harder, but because you are being differently. This is where the second quantum key activates, the magnet code. And it's not about law of attraction in the way you've been taught. It's not about vision boards or wishful thinking. It's about resonance. When you begin to vibrate at the frequency of your true self, you don't chase anything. You become the gravitational center for everything that was already aligned with your soul's blueprint. Think of it like this: every possibility already exists. Every timeline, every version of you, every miracle, every opportunity, it's all encoded into the quantum field. It's not out there, waiting to arrive. It's already here, right now, in a higher layer of vibration. What separates you from it isn't distance. It's frequency. The magnet code teaches you how to tune your inner state to the version of reality that already holds what you desire, not by force, but by coherence. You don't command the field, you synchronize with it. And this is where most people get it wrong. They try to manifest from their wounds. They try to attract from a place of lack. They say affirmations with their mouth while their energy says, "I don't believe this." But the field doesn't respond to language, it responds to vibration. So if you're trying to attract love while vibrating in abandonment, if you're calling in purpose while vibrating in fear, the field doesn't judge you, it simply mirrors you. It reflects what you are, not what you say. That's why alignment is everything. When you become the frequency of what you seek, it has no choice but to appear. But how do you shift your frequency? Not by pretending, not by faking positivity. You shift it through authentic embodiment. That means living, breathing, and acting as if you already are the version of you who has what you desire. It means asking yourself every day, what does the fully activated version of me choose right now? How do they speak? What do they say no to? What do they tolerate? What kind of people do they allow into their field? You don't wait for the external to change, you become the energetic blueprint that demands a new reality. And the field always listens. You've probably already experienced this in moments of alignment, those strange synchronicities that feel too precise to be coincidence. The right person calling you just as you were thinking of them. A book falling off a shelf with exactly the message you needed. A job opportunity appearing after you finally walked away from the one that drained you. These aren't random, they're responses. They're the quantum field rearranging itself around your shift in frequency. The more you trust that, the more you begin to live in what I call magnetic flow. You stop chasing, you stop doubting. You start responding to the pull, the whisper, the alignment, and life becomes a series of divine appointments. But let me be clear, this doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes clear. Because once you activate the magnet code, anything out of alignment will fall away fast. Relationships, habits, environments, you'll feel a sudden urge to release what no longer matches your frequency. And that can feel like loss. But it's actually liberation, because what's falling away is making room for what's already waiting for you in the higher timeline. The key is trust, deep, cellular trust, not just in the universe but in yourself, in your own vibration, in your own ability to hold the energy of what you say you want without sabotaging it. That's where your mastery begins. Not in controlling the outcome, but in maintaining the frequency. Can you hold the vibration of abundance when your bank account says otherwise? Can you walk like love when your heart is still healing? Can you embody purpose when the path ahead is foggy? That's the real test. That's the magnet code in action. So I ask you now, what version of you have you been afraid to become? And what would happen if you stopped waiting for permission and started vibrating as them now? Because the truth is, your highest timeline isn't in the future. It's now, vibrating just outside your current state. And the only thing separating you from it is the frequency you're willing to hold. You are the magnet. You are the code. You are the field. The DNA switch, activating dormant codes through quantum action and cellular memory. There's a reason why, Even after you begin to remember who you are and align with the quantum field, something inside still feels like it's sleeping. But you can feel it, can't you? That sense of untapped potential, like a reservoir of power and wisdom buried beneath layers of emotion, memory, and history. That's not imagination. That's your genetic memory, a multidimensional library encoded in every strand of your DNA, waiting for you to turn the key. And that key is not just thought. It's not just alignment. It's action. Conscious, quantum-aligned action that sends a shockwave through your cells and tells your entire being, it's time to wake up. This is the third quantum key, the DNA switch. And it's not symbolic, it's real. Your DNA is not just a biological blueprint. It is a living, breathing, quantum interface between your soul and your physical form. Scientists call 97% of it junk DNA because they don't understand what it's doing. But spiritual initiates, mystics, and ancient civilizations knew better. That junk is actually dormant spiritual code, light-encoded instructions from higher realms, waiting for the moment you become conscious enough to activate them. And the moment you begin to live from your true frequency, take aligned action, and step into the unknown with trust, something miraculous begins to happen. Your cells start to respond. Imagine this: every time you choose courage over fear, your DNA lights up. Every time you speak truth instead of hiding, your nervous system realigns. Every time you act in alignment with your higher timeline, even if it scares you, you send a signal to your body, "We're ready." And your body listens. It doesn't just listen, it changes. That's why certain initiations feel like death. Why your body shakes, your emotions erupt, your dreams intensify. You're not breaking down, you're reprogramming. You're moving out of ancestral coding and into divine programming, but you're literally shifting your physical vessel to hold more light. But here's where it gets real. You can't fake this. You can't just say the affirmations and expect a miracle. The DNA switch only activates through embodied truth, but that means doing the thing you've been avoiding. That means stepping toward the unknown even when your ego screams to stay safe. That means honoring your intuition over your conditioning again and again until your cells believe you. Because your DNA responds to consistency, to coherence, to the merging of thought, emotion, and action in one unified frequency. That's when the old codes begin to dissolve. That's when you stop repeating the patterns of your family, your past lives, your trauma. That's when you become new. Let me ask you something that might shake you. What would it cost you to fully activate your DNA? What part of your identity would you have to let die? Because that's the real reason most people stay dormant. Not because they're not gifted, not because they're not chosen, but because they're still clinging to the version of themselves that was built for survival, not expansion. You can't hold on to your past and step into your multidimensional self at the same time. One must go, and you already know which one it is. The beautiful part is, your DNA is patient. It's been waiting for this moment for lifetimes. It remembers who you are, even when you forget. It holds the codes for your clairvoyance, your healing abilities, your connection to the cosmic grid. It holds memories of Atlantis, Lemuria, ancient temples, star systems your mind can't pronounce but your soul aches for. And when you begin to live as if those memories are real, because they are, you unlock them. Not through fantasy, through frequency, but through action. through showing up as the true you, even when the world doesn't understand. This is also where your body becomes your temple, not your enemy. You begin to treat it differently, not from vanity, but from reverence. You eat foods that carry high codes. You move with intention. You rest when called. Because you realize your body is the container for your mission. And the more you care for it, the more it becomes a conduit for your higher self. Your DNA isn't static. It's listening. It's shifting. It's becoming. And your job, as a chosen one, is to give it the signal that you're ready to receive what it's been holding all along. So I ask you now, what aligned action have you been avoiding that your soul keeps whispering about? What would happen if you stopped waiting for the perfect moment and acted as if your future self was already watching you, cheering you on? Because the truth is, they are. The divine override becoming the living portal between dimensions. There comes a point on this path when something irreversible happens. You've remembered the ancient frequency. You've aligned with the field. You've activated your DNA through embodied truth. And then everything changes. Not because your external world suddenly becomes perfect, but because you become the axis point of reality itself. You stop being someone who seeks the light, and you become the light source. You stop trying to escape the matrix, and instead, you override it. Not with force, but with frequency. Not by fighting the illusion, but by becoming the portal through which higher realities can enter this world. This is the final quantum key, the divine override. And it's not a metaphor. It's a state of being where your consciousness begins to operate across dimensions simultaneously. You speak, and people feel something ancient awaken inside them. You move, and the field bends around your presence. You're no longer asking the world to validate you, you're transmitting codes simply by existing. You walk into a room and shift the vibration, not because you're trying, but because you're carrying the override frequency. This is what the ancient mystics, the avatars, the prophets embodied. Not perfection, but presence. The kind of presence that collapses distortion and calls people home to their own divine nature. But here's the secret. This level of power doesn't come from being invincible. It comes from radical vulnerability. The divine override is not about ego. It's not about being superior. It's about becoming so empty of illusion that pure source energy flows through you, unfiltered. It's about surrendering your need to control, to be understood, to be liked, and instead choosing to be true. No matter who stays, no matter who leaves, no matter what it costs. It's about letting the truth rearrange you until there's nothing left but light in form. That's when you become the bridge, the living stargate, the walking transmission. That's when your life becomes a prayer that others feel just by watching you breathe. But this path is not for the faint of heart. And to embody the divine override, you must die many times while still alive. You die to your false identities. You die to your attachments. You die to the timeline you once clung to. And each time, something more real is born. Something more ancient. Something more you. You begin to realize that the version of you walking this earth is just one layer, and that your true self is an infinite intelligence flowing through this avatar to complete a mission. And that mission isn't about saving the world in the way the ego imagines. It's about anchoring higher intelligence into this density. It's about living in such alignment with your divine design that others begin to remember their own, not through preaching but through presence. Let me ask you something only your soul can answer. What would your life look like if you fully surrendered to the version of you that already exists in the highest dimension? The one who already knows, already sees, already trusts. What would you release? What would you walk away from forever? What would you create? Because you are not here to play small. You are not here to be understood by the masses. You are here to become the transmission that shifts the collective. And that starts not by fixing the world, but by becoming the override code within it. You don't need to shout your truth. You need to live it. You don't need to fight the system. You need to vibrate beyond it. That's when reality bends. That's when portals open. That's when time stops obeying linear logic and starts responding to you. And this is the ultimate paradox. The more multidimensional you become, the more in the body you must be. Because your physical vessel becomes the anchor, your breath becomes the code, your choices become the ripple. You are no longer just a person, you are a frequency event walking through time. And everywhere you go, you activate the grid, you awaken the dormant. You shake the illusions, not because you're trying to be anything, but because you've finally remembered everything. This is your destiny as a chosen one, but not to escape earth, but to bring heaven into it. Not to ascend into light, but to bring light into the mud. Not to become flawless, but to become fully real. And in doing so, you become the miracle people didn't know they were waiting for. So, are you ready? Not to be more but to be truth? Not to seek but to transmit? Not to awaken but to embody? Because now the keys are yours, and the door isn't somewhere else, it's you.